All right. So I think let's just get started, Julia and everyone. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending upon wherever you are joining from. And welcome to this CGIAR Seed Equal webinar series. And today we are starting off with the first in the series. And this is around the topic, which is very exciting. And it says, Changing Smallholders' Livelihood, Award-Winning Innovations for Seed Systems Development. And indeed, we have award-winning speakers today with us. We have Dr. Jean Claude Rubyogo, and so we call famously known, like many of us famously know him as Jesse. So Jesse, it's a pleasure to have you. And Dr. Jean Claude is the BIN program leader with the Alliance of Biodiversity and Biodiversity International and CGIAR. And Jess is also the director for PABRA, and that's Pan Africa BIN Research Alliance. And importantly, PABRA is the winner of 2023 Africa Food Prize. Jess, if you could, yeah. So Jesse, good to see you on camera. And we also have Dr. Swati Nayak with us. And Dr. Swati Nayak is the South Asia lead for seed systems and product management. Swati, if you could just open your camera for a moment. She is South Asia Seed Systems and Product Management Lead for ERI, and she is the proud recipient of the 2023 Borlaug Field Award. So good to have you, Swati, and good to have you, Jesse, as well. I'm sure this is going to be an exciting webinar. And so with that, my name is Ajay Panchabhai, and I'm the Regional Breeding, Seed Systems and Product Management Lead for ERI in Africa. And I'm the moderator for this session for today. And so before we invite our speakers, Jesse and Swati, I also would like to invite David Spillman. And David is the Director for Innovation Policy and Scaling Unit within IFPRI. And he's also the co-lead for Seed Equal Initiative. So David, we invite you to give opening remarks or welcome remarks. And with that, we'll kickstart with this event. David, can we have you on this? Thank you.
You can hear me, I think, and you can see me as well.
Very well, yeah.
Very good. All right, well, thank you all for coming today to this inaugural seminar of the Seed Equal Initiative, the CGIAR Research Initiative on delivering genetic gain to farmers' fields. We've been working as an initiative for almost a full 2 years now. And we work across the entire spectrum of CGIAR centers and with a large array of partner organizations in national agricultural research and extension systems, private seed companies, and many other organizations to deliver genetic gain to farmers' fields. I'm briefly just going to tell you a little bit about what Seed Equal is and how we operate. But really, I want to turn this seminar back over to Ajay and to our speakers, because they're the highlight of the show. So the goal of Seed Equal is to accelerate varietal turnover, quality seed use, and the realization of genetic gains in farmers' fields. What that means really is modernizing the CGIAR's role in seed system development, particularly seed delivery and scaling, and also ensuring that the genetic gains we speak of reach disadvantaged groups, including women and youth farmers. The key performance indicators that we are chasing as part of this initiative is a reduction in the average varietal age in farmers' fields, increased seed replacement rates in farmers' fields, and greater inclusion of women and youth farmers. It's important to think about or to talk about our key impact pathways, because that's really one of the features of today's seminar. Our focus is not on breeding, it's not on gene banking, it's not on sort of those upstream functions that the CGIAR is well known for. We are focused on innovating on the delivery and scaling of improved varieties and quality seed, focusing especially on that inclusion aspect that I mentioned earlier, trying to cover people who are otherwise overlooked by existing seed systems, whether they be commercial or otherwise. But that doesn't mean that we're doing it ourselves per se. CGIAR is not itself a delivery mechanism. it's our partners who deliver and scale. And that includes some of our most traditional partners, the public research systems, the NARS as they're referred to in many countries, public extension systems and services, seed companies, both domestic, local, and multinational, private agro dealers and agro advisory service providers, financial service providers who offer credit, savings, and insurance instruments that can be bundled with new varieties and quality seed, digital service providers who are providing and packaging information in novel ways, and other innovation system actors. We work across 3 crop archetypes: cereals, legumes, and then roots, tubers, and bananas. We work also on seed policy and regulation. We work on strengthening resilience in emergency and chronic stress conditions. And we work on partnership building and capacity strengthening. All of this with a cross-cutting commitment to scaling equitable access to improve varieties and quality seed. And that's, in a nutshell, what Seed Equal does. We're a group spread across the world, very proud of what we do, very proud of our partnerships in every country we operate and globally. And today, I think we're going to talk more about the nature of those partnerships and the nature of the scaling successes that we are advancing as part of the Seed Equal Initiative and CGIAR. So with that, I hand it back to our moderator, and thank you all for coming today to this inaugural seminar. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David. So thank you so much. As I see, I think we are around 100 participants now, and that is great to see. And thank you so much all for joining. Before I invite our first speaker, that's Jean Claude, I just would like to quickly run through some of the housekeeping rules. So please keep your cameras and microphones turned off. And please use the chat box for any question that you may have. And finally, you may also want to raise your hand if you want to be identified by the moderator to give you a microphone for asking question. With that, I invite Jean Claude, our first speaker for the day. John, Jesse, stage is yours.
All right.
And Jesse, you have 15 minutes. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ajay. Thanks for this opportunity. Thanks for the Seed Equal leadership, and thanks also for the participant. So my discussion will be about impactful bean seed system model and experience from the Pan-African Bean Research Alliance, which you said is the winner of 2023 African Food Prize, but also is the winner of 2019 ALSMITE as well. So yes, that is the prize, I think, which made the focus of to be probably the inaugural speaker of this. If you look at it, maybe beans is the crop which is well known. These are the people we serve in Africa: 150 million smallholder, over 7 million hectares, 400 million consumers, source of various. It's a powerhouse of nutrients and also becoming source of incomes, and very good for our ecosystems too. So then, naturally, let me start by probably giving a overview, a little bit of PABRA, established in 1996, is facilitated by the Alliance of Biodiversity International Initiative, and then work with, as David was saying, many partnership around the beans. So we have the government, we have private sector, the universities, the small medium enterprise, very important, as you can see from the map, around 31 countries, several non-government organization, community-based organization. So it's a kind of multi-stakeholder platform, if I can use. So we're aiming to improve bean production and sustainable productivity, to improve nutrition and consumption, and assuring gender equity as well, for the benefit of urban and poor, who see beans as an important where they get source of these nutrients, but also income. Increasingly, also there's higher end incomes which are interested in beans nowadays due to other factors. So I'll start probably the different seed models which we have been using. Is the history of starting from probably 80s, during the time we was in the Great Lake region. And beans seed system has also been going hands in hands with innovation in the breeding too. So it's not just a seed, but also is how the true breeding has shaped the seed systems and vice versa. So between 1985 to 90s, participatory variety selection and working with understanding the traditional seed systems. And then we start going to the village-based seed actors. These are women who are selecting the variety and start by the production. That's what Louise was involved in the Great Lake region with Izar, with us as well. And then we start also engaging the NGOs in 90s, but this was very slow and sometimes not widely spread, and then weak reach to the potential and working at the community level. So, but then starting from 2000, we shift our breeding toward the market-led breeding based on bean type, different yellow, red motors and others. And then we also, 2003, we start thinking, how do you go to the scale? But in 90s also, toward the end of 90s, we have testing the small packs, but done by national programs, public institutions, not by commercial. But we're testing, can farmer buy when the seed are too small, which was possible. But then 2004, we say, well, with all these varieties we have got to the scale. And we did by testing in Ethiopia the wider impact, which we documented, and we're able, in less than 4 years, we're able to go to 3.8 million households getting this variety because we went to the reach. And then QDS was introduced in many countries, which was great to allow the local seed production. And we start engaging with the policy, engaging with the NAS to think about beyond the variety, but going to really to the scale. So that's the factor in the element of really seed systems in addition to the breeding in order to get the varieties up. And then starting from 2010, we started consolidating the market-led breeding and then developing the value chain of beans, and then really the seed systems taking shape. But that also was not enough. We went to another model where we think that 2013, we did the East African bean trade flow, understanding the grain market and how the corridors of beans work and the flow of beans from the consumption to the production. And that's why we came with the concept of a bean corridor, which we are now implementing. And then this also is anchored within the demand-led breeding. And then we start thinking about the demand-led seed systems, and we intensify. For the last up to 2022, around 37 million households were able to be reached as well. And that's why we start engaging the policy makers, getting the support from those who unlock the policy aspect, engaging more private sector, because now increasingly become with the corridor, that's commercialization, the grain traders comes in. We start working with the grain traders as market pool, but also which can serve the local seed production too at the local level. And then stakeholder platforms start coming in where we look at all these actors together. How do you work with them? How do you bring in information in a big way? And then the corridor and the demand led strengthened as well. So if I nutshell, the corridor is oriented, and how does the seed system fit in the corridor, which looks on the consumption and production of beans. We're looking on start understanding the most preferred bean varieties and the traits, and then we look at the volume needed by the traders, and then looking on how do we now match that demand with the grain production, with the seed production. And the seed production also must fit in the grain production. And then that pulls the more over, the seed is pulled by the demand of the grain, because the grain also is demanded by the consumer, and the farmer responds to that. And then our breeding pipeline aligned to that. That's why we have the different market type, different agroecology suitability of the different varieties. So it's more of a demand-led, which again we're implementing. Of course, we started in 2000, but I think we refine as we go. So this is how probably also at the terms of variety change and variety release, it's not that a big issue to release the variety because of the network, because of countries work together, they share germplasm. On the left side, you can see average of number of varieties released between 1990 to 2002, and then even jump to 100 per year across that average in our 31 countries. But also we start thinking about how do we replace the old varieties As you can see from the right side, let's say Ethiopia, Mexican 142. When we start working in Ethiopia, Awash 1, we worked with the of course, Ethiopian Institute of Agriculture taking the lead, working with the cooperatives, replacing Mexican 142 by Awash, and then up to Awash 2, and then others as well, the same in Tanzania, the same in Uganda, thinking how do you replace the old varieties by the new one. We still have a long way to go, but at least the motion is going on, and how do you go about it is well understood by most of our colleagues. So then how the corridor works at the local level, at the community level, we have an aggregator, like what you see in Rwanda, an example, aggregator trust, which moves around 3,000 metric tons of these varieties. They're replacing this RWR 2245. These varieties were released 2 years ago, and then they really fit in what the aggregator is looking for. And then aggregator, because of the demand, working with around 29, closer to 28,000 smallholder women and women, supplying the grain to the aggregator. Of course, that makes it easy for iGen Harvest, which is a seed company, to supply these varieties to the farmer, and then when they grow, the aggregator aggregates the demand. And so this fits very well in the different consumer demand, the institutional market, and processors. Our role as a RAB, which is the Rwanda Agricultural Board, and CGIAR as a research, is to provide agronomic information on varieties, seed business skilling, smart partnership, linking with also other, as David was talking about, bundling, and bringing the breeding pipeline to continue this variety demand. That's now the approach that is getting momentum. This has been expanded to Kaupi because under Seed Equal, we're working also under Work Package 2 with ITA team. So they are also doing similar, and they have seen also increase by grain traders getting to really to go to the Kaupis and then demanding what the farmer should produce, and then able to work with the farmer. So ITA also is working together with the colleagues in Ethiopia, in Nigeria. So there's also a merging of different use of beans. You can start from the grain you see on the right side, but also there's increasing the processing of beans to many other products which are looking for specific variety. That's an emerging, still very small, but it's growing up. But the majority remains the grain, who are looking on specific variety because of consumption, because of different cooking quality they're looking for. And then when you work with the partners, as David indicated, they only also pull their resources together. It's not just our contribution alone. We only contribute the variety and information, but the private sector take it, have a material to train the communities. They bring in finance. They bring the whole package. That's an example of Zambia, where Good Nature Agro is able to produce seed using the variety raised by Zari, and then making use to the farmer, bringing the finance, blending, and then supporting the community, and that helps in the adoption of varieties. So this is the corridor across Africa. We'll go to the details. What are the impacts? If I look at it, this is the trend of, we've seen a trend, a positive trend in terms of breeder seed, foundation seed, certified seed, except between when COVID struck was a bit of challenge, but you can see the trend is moving. Still maybe not high as we should, but at least they go up to 20,000 metric tons of certified seed, which is great. We still have a long way to go, but at least the trend is great. So if you look at the replacement of all the varieties across countries, the dark green is that the new variety less than 10 years old. Burundi has up to 82%, Ethiopia 45%. I think because of commercialization it goes slow. Rwanda 62%. Tanzania is still also maybe because of big country, but you can see there's really momentum of getting new varieties in the hands of the farmer compared to the volume of seed which is produced in each country. And then we're able to reduce the time between release and use, which usually was more than 15 years. You release a variety and sometimes take 15 years. We're able to release it to less than 4 years. That means when 50 tons of certified seed and QDS is available to the farmer. At least that's when we'll be able to, you can see the metrics from various countries. So this, the productivity increase is on the trend in some countries, definitely. Uganda is very high. Tanzania is catching up, the same with Ethiopia, which has, these countries have been able to double their productivity. Rwanda is still flat. Zambia is coming up, and as well, and Malawi. So if you look at the composition of new varieties in the grain market, this is what we did, the sampling with the traders. We engaged, days of takers we engaged across countries, Burundi up to Uganda. You can see the number of traders we work, who are partners to what we do, the volume they handle, and then also the percentage compared to the grain produced by each country is still very low. But at least you can see that majority of the variety used, the share of the new varieties is quite high in their business because we work together. And then less than 10 years is also quite high. So there is a possibility that really this system can work off demand. What is the impact at the country level, at the continental level? For instance, in Rwanda, where variety RWR2245 released in 2012, farmers who adopted it, quite a number of them, 14% were able to really increase the consumption of beans up to 14%. And then the probability of selling is 16, and they reduced the hunger period by 20 days. That's quite huge at the farm level. And then Burundi, there's a good number of, the yield increased by 40%, and this inject around 89,000 metric tons available for the domestic market. Ethiopia, I think those who know the case of Ethiopia white pea beans, it was around 8 million 2004. Now it's closer to $100 million. It's a big industry from 2 exporters to more than 460 exporters, employing more than 200,000 staffs. And then the new varieties released for the last 25 years, around closer to 660 and 37 million households have accessed it. I think very important, look at the Uganda, how the beans have improved in terms of regional trade, which is not just export from out, going outside, but the regional trade from 5 million in 2000 to 2017, 80 million, for now is 132 million, which again is really great compared, I think is around
Jesse.
coffee. Yeah, I'm about to finish this return on investment.
Sure,
if you want to invest, really, the investment, this was a study conducted by Mathematica, yes. Return on investment in beans in Tanzania is the highest across, even compared to other legumes too. So $1, $32.4. So what are the really conclusion? That's the demand-led seed systems go in hands with the demand-led breeding. You need the right products in order to really make a difference, to go to the farmer with the good case and the consumer. Legumes and pulses, really the seed demand is derived. You need to understand the grain demand. And then there's also, as we work with this, you really can see the shifting of aligning between seed and grain, but also between variety replacement too. So again, you need to work as a multi-stakeholder platform and then see how investment can be more, because you cannot talk about seed alone. You need to think about other complementary and innovations in order to get the varieties and people to adopt it. And this is very scalable because I think, again, example of cowpea gives you that we can scale up. We're also doing the same with the groundnut and sorghum in Tanzania too. Just to appreciate the acknowledgement of various donors and contributors as well, who has helped to get this done. And thank you everybody for your effort. And then thanks for investing in bean research and as well PABRA and the bean value chain. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you so much. I mean, this has been exciting, and thank you also for taking us through all the exciting journey of PABRA, and also some of those very, very innovative business models and beans corridor and so on. I'm sure this will trigger a lot of questions, and I'm looking at the chat box as well. Just all the viewers and listeners, please just feel free to put in your questions in the chat box. With that, may I now invite Swati Nayak to tell us about how the linking market and society has really contributed to the award-winning intervention in seed system. Swati, the stage is yours, and you have 15 minutes. Swati, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ajay. Jesse, could you please stop sharing this?
You can share. I have stopped.
It's still being shared. The previous one is still
Jesse,
shared.
We still see your screen, Jesse.
Okay, so right.
Sorry.
Maybe because she. Okay, done.
All right, now it's be okay.
Thank
Fine.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right. Thank you, Ajay. Thank you, everyone. It was wonderful to hear JC, my previous presenter. And yes, so I will be mostly talking about rice system, the work in South Asia, particularly that, has led to some of the impacts. And I will be broadly touching base with, our approaches, what we have been trying to do while we're ensuring that, access to quality seed and also new age germplasm becoming a reality. So in this title, like linking market to society, why I chose this title is that because the entire transformative approach that we have followed in terms of linking breeding, a market and the seed system scaling strategies over last few years, which also goes hand in glove with the vision and objectives of Seed Equal, that has really triggered many changes that is palpable on the ground. Let me show you a snapshot of how the scenario in two predominantly rice growing economies or countries like India and Bangladesh do look like. When we look at the market share by many of these, released rice varieties, you could see clearly that more than 65% of the market share is still dominated by the older varieties. I mean, that goes beyond 10 years, but you also see a large chunk of those also having an average year of more than 20 years, and even up to, some of the predominant mega varieties touching the varietal age up to 40 years. And this is happening in, as I say, a predominantly rice growing country where we assume that, the modern varietal development programs post Green Revolution has evolved a lot. So you see 1,500 plus rice varieties probably registered and licensed. And but when you go to the seed chain and look at the indenting that get published, you will see maybe 350 plus varieties that's showing, and 80 products will be probably having a respectable market share, like maybe 0.5% or even more, but 50 products will be capturing 70% of the total volume. So this also shows the very grim picture of how the varietal replacement looks like. So to release and register those 1,500 plus rice varieties, certainly a lot of investment would have gone, but eventually when we see what is being grown and available with the farmers, that picture based on the formal seed system data looks like very dismal. And at the same time, seed replacement rate remains very poor, 30 to 40% on an average. But you go to the smallholder pockets and belts, there is seen as so much of regional variation also. I mean, you can see replacement rates have been dipping down below 30%. So, I mean, this is the situation. It's not the case always that, good varieties are not coming out of the breeding programs, but often it is the access to those varieties and also timely adoption of those variety in the quest of quality seed being available to those end users. So while we all understand that we don't have to say that how seed is critical in the entire production process or beyond that, but what we brought into the picture is the new imperatives which became our essentials and non-negotiables over the last few years, where we try to consider seed beyond just an input, and the approach to the shift from the traditional approach and thinking it as a product which is influenced by a lot of factors, including the market actors, institutions, regulatory domain policies, and different interlinked factors. And we also understand the demand drivers would be many. It will not just be the farmers who demand, but also the middle, the intermediaries that exist in the seed chain. They also drive a lot of, demand mass that what needs to work. I am giving just example, in one of the state in India, we recently saw a, tremendous increase in the indenting of a particular biofortified variety, because an enabling policy was brought in by the government where they assured minimum support price and buying from the farmers for that thing. But so there are several complexities that also influence, like, what is going to work and what not going to work. So how do we take into consideration those stakeholders' feedback also into our seed scaling and advancement programs? At the same time, it provides a lot of livelihood and business opportunities. When we say the seed replacement ratio is 30 to 40%, so it's safe to assume that a large chunk of this market is not yet tapped, and there remains a lot of business opportunities, not just for the ones who want to get into seed enterprise domain, but also to meet the need of access that is there for us to address to yet. And when we talk about access, we cannot shy away from decentralized processes and methods and models where we want to ensure the seed availability. Looking at the context of, few smallholder pockets in Eastern India, we did a quick analysis and we see that, one active dealer is available for 20 villages. And so you imagine that how many farmers would be eager or willing to reach out to that dealer who is located in a urban headquarters to be able to access seeds. And we do understand, we hear primarily talking about inbred seeds, the cost of which is not very high, and farmers are willing to buy and grow, provided they have the access in their closer proximity. So that is something we see, that the potential that remains, and hence if we consider it only as an input, probably will not be potentially capitalizing on the opportunities available with us. So hence we made a shift into that, and we embrace the change in terms of our market lead or so-called demand-driven seed system, where we try to integrate our approach very closely and robustly with our breeding pipelines and define priority market segments for which we will be working, or targeting the leading market dominant varieties currently available. So that included not just farmers' demands and preferences, that was taken care while we designed the products, for particular pipeline, but when it has arrived, we have so much of less reaction time. And if we do not act to ensure that these new promising varieties, which is showing our early, performance results, are not pushed aggressively in the seed chain or made available, then probably they will be aged, and by that time it will be ready for the replacement. So again, we will be getting into that vicious cycle of poor varietal replacement and higher varietal average age. So in that context, we followed it stringently by ensuring that we are taking into consideration our market segmentation approach, where we are already taking into the key parameters in terms of growing method, maturity, grain shape, cooking quality, and also many embedded other traits which is listed in those product designs in the breeding pipeline. So we wanted to stick on to that to ensure that we are having a matching better product for the farmers and other stakeholders in the market to be able to replace their existing older products. They must get some value-added proposition for themselves, and by doing so, we wanted to create exact, neck to neck, comparison with, the closest product. And so to make the decision making for adoption easier for them, and have a targeted positioning and scaling and strategy for supply, increase for those varieties in a particular segment. In order to do that, we had to bring in some systemic change, and more so also cultural, that how institutions and how stakeholders in the natural system work together. Often it was a very clear picture in front of us that how the breeding network partners or stakeholders or the scientists work or talk, and how the extension systems or the stakeholders in the same national system work. So the silos were very visible. So we started by bridging the silos existing between two powerful networks by bringing them together through, common platforms. And as a CGIAR institution, we played this role very well by, organizing very regular advancement meetings where in the same platform we'll be having not only just breeders talking about their pipelines, the, developments and the progresses on that, but also our extension stakeholders coming in and having a discussion and having a common language of what we understand by genetic gain and what we are going to evaluate and how our on-farm trialing would look like. And the transparent nominations kept on happening in a particular pipeline, like every year, how many products are being nominated openly in the forum by the breeders. And then, that included multiple institutions, and it made the pool entirely transparent and competitive also, and where the extension stakeholders took it ahead to, evaluate through on-farm testing methods, in a quick adaptation trial to ensure that, it is working well in their local conditions, and etc. So while we focused on generating robust evidence through our OFTs, we also use those robust evidence to influence different stakeholders who worked at national level or at a federal level to be able to position and scale. So those data gave us tremendous confidence on where, how, and what should be scaled, and now how much confident we are to invest in the scaling effort in terms of putting efforts in creating the demands and the positioning, and to ensure also the supplies and actors, taking up this ahead. While we worked with the traditional supply systems, like our public sector corporations, private entities, we all understand that amidst their existence, even though they exist for many years and quite evolved in the region which we are talking about, but still 60% of the farmers are not having an access to formal source of seed. So that creates a avenue as well as the need for bringing in alternative institutions to coexist along with the formal public and private sector seed system institutions. Hence, we leverage strongly the community institutions, especially women-led institutions, to create more seed enterprises in the region to reach out to the last mile smallholder farmers. And while we did so, we made a shift from capacity building approaches which were followed in traditional extension models, where we focus primarily on quality seed technical trainings and capacity buildings. But we also came to know the major hiccup lies beyond that. The major hiccup lies that connecting them to different regulatory affairs. So, how do they talk to those licensing officers? How do they assure labeling, tagging of their seed by ensuring multi-stage testing, inspection happening in a regular manner? How do they register as a joint, as a collective, or as an individual grower? So all those, regulatory mechanisms were very tough for them, given the ambience and the structure which they are coming from. And so we try to bridge that gap.
Sorry, if you could
Yeah.
just summarize in the next 3 minutes. Thank you.
So then we also followed the process of giving them information about the source, early generation seed, and the business and market linkage opportunity to be able to sell as individual entity, or also partner with various supply chain actors and other institutions or the channel partners. So in that manner, we created some sustainable model for enterprises led by women and farmer producer organizations who are now confidently growing tons of volumes of quality seeds. And we also, even though smaller, but yet, the knowledge equity is something which is not, readily available in the smallholder pockets. How do we ensure that our, information, training manuals and materials are gender friendly, friendly to the smallholder farmers, contextual? So these small innovations had great impact even in the farmer managed systems when we engage the existing extension worker and institutional mass dissemination of this kind of materials with them. We also decoded and simplified that what positioning statement we want to give to the growers, to the dealers, or whoever want to scale a particular product, what to replace, and what is the strength, what is the weakness, and how do they look for the next alternative product. So we created very simple one-pager profiles to be able to comprehensible for the decision makers. And at the same time, digital innovation is something which we also brought in to create, a better inventory demand estimation systems for the stakeholders by engaging dealers to shift from manual, demand collation efforts to digitize indenting to increase the efficiency, reduce the time lag, and also transparency in the system. So these are the some things which we brought in as innovation while we went ahead. And as I would like to highlight that while we focused on the farmers, their institutions, the actors, we didn't forget out the critical influence of the market players like dealers and millers. They were thoroughly involved our process of assessment and etc. To summarize, what I would like to highlight that what worked for us, and that primarily the model which we spoke about was our approach towards how we brought in the breeding and extension stakeholders in the same forum, where they spoke about the same language, and the same goal setting was done every season, every year. And at the same time, the entire varietal testing system was made farmer friendly, but also quite transparent and statistically robust. At the same time, we also engaged a lot of participatory approaches to ensure that the demand or the linkages which we are creating, that is collectively accepted by a lot of critical stakeholders in the regions, be it the farmers, seed growers, but also the large scale flagship government programs who could also include our positioned and promoted varieties in the mass distribution programs, which they are well capacitated of. So these are some of the approaches which paid off well to be able to ensure that some of the new generation germplasm are easily accessible to the seed systems, to our smallholder farmers especially. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Swati. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the message is very loud and clear. End-to-end approach and still, market-driven approach is the key. So thank you so much, Swati. And I'm sure this also triggered a lot of questions as well, and we'll be watching that space. So now as a next phase in today's webinar, what we would like to do is to really, move towards panel discussion with, again, two award-winning speakers that we have today, Swati and JC. But I also would like to invite Chris Ojevo to join this panel. And as many of us know, Chris is the Seed Equal Initiative lead for us. But at the same time, he's also the Strategic Partnerships and Seed System lead with CIMID. So, and then importantly, so Chris also was the part of 2021 Africa Food Prize winning team while he was still with ICRISAT. So Chris, welcome to the panel discussion. And can we have, so JC, Swati, Chris, can we have your mic, your camera on?
Yeah, it's on for me.
It's on. I'm just trying to adjust the background. It doesn't seem to be very clear.
All right. And can we have JC with his camera on as well?
Yeah. I've already put it on.
Sorry, maybe between those too many windows, probably I'm not just able to figure out.
Yeah.
Ajay, could you just please proceed? Is Ajay still there? Did we lose Ajay?
So when you joined, he left. So
We lost our moderator.
I think you can proceed with the panel discussion, yeah?
Yep.
okay, maybe at the
So David, you become the moderator then.
Go ahead. I don't have any questions in front of me, but why don't you guys go ahead? And we can see if Ajay comes back on.
Here he is.
Back?
Hello, Ajay. Welcome back.
Sorry. Yeah, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Actually, my network is not supporting very well. Well, so with all the panelists now, yeah. So with that, let me start with the UJC. Of course, we heard from you about exciting stories of PABRA and also the how some of those like very innovative approaches really helped you. So I mean, PABRA, then you being the director of PABRA, I mean, you have been working very closely with the farming community, and as we heard from your side, there have been very significant success stories as well. But still, I think a long way to go in terms of seed systems in beans. So what are in current context, what are the challenges that you are facing at JC, and how do we really address those challenges?
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Ajay. Yeah, some of the challenge linked to the type of the crops which attract less investment compared to others, definitely. To pulses attract less investment in seed than others. But when we try to work with the market pool, the traders as a pool of the seed, because traders can also either give market signals to the communities, so the communities can procure the varieties. But also, they can also buy the variety and supply where they buy grain. That's another avenue. They don't produce seed except those who registered as both seed company and the grain market. But some of the challenge I think we have is to understand the private sector well, definitely from even in ourselves as researchers, to what they need, how do we support them, how do we incentivize them, shift of that mentality. And private sector needs a solution from, let's say, like if it was yesterday, because they need to make money. So how do you plug in what we do to the private sector interests? I think is an institutional change and mentality change, which we need to cultivate as we go. Of course, there are some elements linked also. Other challenges are linked to the seed systems. Maybe may have a fake seed that can happen. As sometimes variety which are look the same, like in the beans. So a yellow bean may be similar to another grain type, and that's again, how do you separate them? The farmer helping them is not like the yellow can be the same, or red motor can be several which are look like. That's some of the challenge, and the farmers don't have other way to identify them except the grain. And when they plant, that's as you create the demand. I think that some who have seen is the challenge of origination seed to beef up. Like there's a popular variety which was released 2 years ago in Tanzania, Tari Bean 6. I tell you, the demand is high. It overwhelms the Tari. Private sector want to jump in. They don't get enough. So we have, again, it's an example, but it's not only Tanzania, it's across many. So transformation of our research attitude, both at the CG, both at the NAS, to go to the private sector and work with them. It's another shift which I think we need to cultivate as we go. How do we support them? How do we bring other smart partnership? Because as I said, variety is not only solution, variety catalyzes investment in other areas. So once you have a good variety, it catalyzes investment in agronomy, it catalyzes investments in post-harvest, it catalyzes investment in other aspects. You start by the right variety, which incentivizes the farmer, and the farmer can invest. It's not only contribution, but you need to bring all that together. As we said in Zambia, you start by variety, you bring in finance, you bring in agronomy, you bring in skills, but the variety is the starting point for other investment to happen. So there's a lot of that we need to put in place in order to go to the scale. Going to the scale is really a challenge, I think.
Thank you, Jesse. I think, yeah, so going to the scale is really the key and also challenging. And I know Swati spoke a lot about, community-led initiatives, and that is essentially also contributing to the scale. So Swati, I mean, hearing from your talk, you also emphasize on the community-led initiatives and so on. I'm sure there must have been very, many challenges that way. So what are some of the challenges when you were trying to, kind of get these communities on board right at the beginning, right? And then later when they are with us, when you try to graduate them towards systematic businesses. So what are the challenges that you face at that level, and how do you address that?
Yeah. Ajay, when we entered into this space and started working with this, and we tried to map that what are the existing services or actors or extensions agents are available, because obviously we needed that partnership to ensure that it is happening at the ground level, and we need more people and hands-on, putting over there. But what we realized that even when we talk to these the ground level extension workers with whom we want to ensure that our targeted women groups are getting into the seed production and etc., we saw that traditionally the entire system has been working on very low hanging fruits, which is around say providing quality seed productions, organizing those kind of training programs and etc. And even those training programs are not season long. Those are often one time, we go and host a classroom or we organize a training and then we finish it up. But then seed production is a critical activity which requires a lot of crucial steps which are season long, and not necessarily these women who are trained will have that recall value to be able to carry out all the critical operations, in the over the period of time, and or any smallholder farmers as such. So was a we saw that we are struggling over there where the baseline is already very poor, but at the same time we did not want to catch only to the low hanging fruits, because here what we were not talking about only access or equitable access, but here we were talking about empowerment through possible business or income opportunities as well. And we knew that seed has a potential market and that is untapped. So hence it was a mammoth jump from that baseline to get into that domain, that where we bring in those stakeholders, as I was highlighting, the regulatory officers, the licensing officers, who could come to their doorstep to explain them in terms of what is the process, how do they register, how do they get the license, tagging and all those things. And so to start that conversation, we had to really organize a lot of kind of a I won't say it is exactly a buyer-seller meet, but it was certainly crucial interactive meetups where at a common platform where we brought in our community leaders or the group leaders or entrepreneurs, representatives, and these officials to talk and work it out, what will be the modalities, giving them alternatives, finding the innovative ways to get them into that procedures. And of course that was one step to make them confident in their skin. But then the other challenges were certainly in terms of business or market linkage aspect, where they do not have a lot of source information, or even to ensure that how do they get connected to the the dealers or the shopkeepers who are storing seeds or selling inputs. Who are they, where are they located, and what are the existing price regimes, so where they can play around. So all those critical information was made available to them. And it was not that it is a dynamic process, and it is still evolving. Few groups or few community groups are in advanced stage where they are able to confidently now negotiate with the the dealers or the retailers to stock their seeds and everything, and few we are still taking the step ahead. So this is a gradual process, but then through regular meetups, regular interactions, and bringing in the local governance bodies into the picture, and that also helped a lot, because these are FPOs, these are farmer-led organizations. What cushioning we can provide, what word of mouth we can provide through our local governance bodies to, create that seed trust among the, the sellers and these, suppliers or these agencies. So that is something we gradually brought in the steps to them to make sure that they are able to bargain confidently and able to sell their seed branded and, stocking in the market.
Well, very exciting, Swati, and thank you so much. So I definitely have some follow-up questions on this one, but probably I'll come back to you later on that. So with that, let me now bring in Chris into the conversation. So Chris, we have heard, a lot from Swati, and which is the experience coming from Asian seed sector. Now, you have been working in Africa for many years, and also you're exposed to the Asian sector as well. When we look at the African seed sector, and more so for OPV crops, still, more than 80% is still dependent upon the farmer managed systems. So in your expertise, in your experience, how do we make sure that the best of the varieties or best of the genetics are made available to farmers, and then the quality seed of those improved varieties are actually accessible to the farmers? Yeah, Chris.
Thank you, Jai, and thanks to JC and Swati for taking lead in these presentations and sharing with us the innovations that led to winning these different prizes. A few quick comments on that specific question. One, farmers don't just take varieties for the sake of varieties and produce varieties because they're new and because they've been developed. Farmers do eat varieties eat crops or products of those crops for specific reasons. So they make very good choices because, as this phrase goes, smallholder farmers, their holding is small. And because their holding is small, they're limited in terms of resources. So they have to make lots of choices in terms of which crop are they going to produce on this limited resource called land, which variety of that particular crop they're going to produce, for what purpose, is it for market or for their consumption, and also critically, what is going to be the source of the seed that they're going to use to produce that variety. So these are decisions that happen either consciously or unconsciously, but they keep happening cyclically from season to season. And if we do not understand that sort of decision cycle, then we end up with a situation where we've developed varieties and insist on promoting varieties that are not necessarily meeting the farmer's needs in terms of tastes, in terms of preferences, in terms of cultural integration, social integration, sometimes even religious integration. Some of those crops and varieties play important roles in those different socio-cultural and religious, as well as economic issues among the farmers. So back to, I think, what both JC and Swati have mentioned about linkage between seed systems and breeding, so that we are responding to demand. I normally sort of emphasize that the supply end is supposed to be responsive to demand signals. And those demand signals, most our immediate people are farmers, but they're not the only people that we interact with. They're farmers, they're consumers, they're processors, they're traders. And so my emphasis would be relying on the social scientists as well as seed system scientists to do what I would call customer profiling. What profiles of customers are we dealing with for us to be able to deliver for them varieties? And that sort of information should be fed back to breeders to say, what sort of varieties are you developing? Varieties are not sufficiently good if they're just higher yielding or resistant to abiotic and biotic factors in the field, without considering the end use, whether it's going to be used within the family, a household for the various purposes I've mentioned, or it goes through additional stages beyond the farmer, what I call post-farm operation actors. And if we don't consider those post-farm operation actors, we fail to place new varieties into the system. And so that's for me one of the most critical and important points. But I think other points that I would like to quickly mention, one is promotion. A lot of varieties are developed and released through public sector, whether they're developed by CG, it's normally in collaboration with the public sector. And the public sector investment in creation of awareness in new varieties in terms of budgetary investments sometimes is low. Yes, there's a lot of emphasis on development of varieties, including even from the international institutions, but there isn't as much investment in creation of awareness of these new varieties. And that is sort of as if, you know, this adoption will somehow sort itself. Let's develop the varieties, but the adoption will sort itself out. And that we end up with a situation where varieties are on the shelf and they're not adopted. And not necessarily that they're bad. Some are very good varieties, and until we unlock that seed system, then they stay on the shelf. The other point I would like to also mention is the supply end. I've talked about quite a demand characteristics, but the supply end also, in terms of early generation seed. If you create demand and we have 10,000 farmers coming to say we need 1 kg each, or 1 million farmers coming to say we need just half a gram each, do we have sufficient quantities to respond to that demand? And sometimes you find that varieties are released with less than 20 kgs or 200 kgs, depending on the crop. And for us to be able to move from that 200 kgs to a sufficient quantity that will be able to meet the needs of the farmers when they require those varieties, it takes quite a bit of time, because it takes a cycle after a cycle to be able to produce sufficient quantities that meet these needs. And that's in investment in what I would call just source seed, or more technically people call early generation seed. Well, of course, most reference to breeder seed and foundation seed. But even if we think about the other linkages downstream, how do we get that early generation seed into the system? And then a last point I would like to make is in terms of integrating strategic partnerships that enable us to reach the last mile. Most public sector institutions, as well as private sector institutions, operate within a distance between towns and cities, and not so far from the cities. Will you find, or towns or market centers, will you find, say, outlets that sell seed? And some of those are as far as 20 kilometers away, 50 kilometers away from the farmer. And the farmer has to pay for transport to be able to access. Somebody's speaking. So the farmer has to pay additional transport just to go and acquire the seed. And that sort of, precludes the farmer from accessing some of these improved genetics, maybe innovative ways to ensure that we reach that last mile farmer through an inclusive seed systems approach, where we are not absolutely saying it is the public sector or the private sector or the formal versus the informal, but we find an integrated way, an integrated system where both formal and informal systems play a role and still benefit without losing. So the public sector or the private sector, the formal sector can play its role without losing to the informal sector in terms of business, but the informal sector can also play its role without losing in terms of getting the right quality of seed or material into the hands of the farmer. And I could continue the list, but let me stop there for now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. I think you spoke about many points, and importantly, you also spoke about the partnership, public-private partnership. So that, and which is very interesting. So that basically brings me to now JC. So JC, often what we see is especially for public-private partnership, private sector is very much involved and engaged or interested in the crops that they are interested in, right? But unfortunately, there are many crops where their interest is not that high. So how has been, and unfortunately, bean comes in that category. So how has been your experience with private sector engagement, in bean seed system, and what is your vision on that? And like, how do you like to see private sector engagement in bean sector? Yeah, Jesse.
Right. Yeah. Maybe again, that's a good question. I look at it this way. That's probably orphan crop can move from that orphan to high value crops, or to commercial crop, or to what farmer will invest in. Though we're not yet there with the beans, but I say change. I say change because, as I said, seed systems and demand-led breeding work together. And then if you really get the right product, which address the farmer's needs and also addresses the consumer need, certainly that attracts the farmer. And increasingly, we have seen that because our breeding was oriented toward the market for some time, and understanding the consumer, that has helped. Of course, there were few varieties or bean type compared to how it used to be traditionally, but there's numbers which, if you understand the consumer and come back to the breeding to design the right product which the consumer is looking for and the farmer is looking for, and then is taken by the market or for household consumption, that has a chance to get the private sector invest in what we do. So you start from understanding the demand and then develop the products which are demanded, and then to see how that product, working with the actors in the value chain to see how that's happening. So the example I was giving is when you work with traders, they don't produce seed, but since they're interested in a specific variety with a good marketability, they would like also farmers where they buy the grain, produce that variety. And those farmers, once they have a market incentives, then they can also go and look for seed, either as a quality grain. Sometimes when they go to the local market, they know what to buy because they're interested in the quality which says, or somebody can pack small and then sell, or also the grain traders can buy from a seed producer and then supply to the community. So really, I think the whole issue is understanding the demand side and then work toward that, and then allow more other investment, as also Chris indicated. How do you make sure that what you do along the corridor, the value chain, becomes an investment platform to add value to what other people are doing and then invest in it? So we have seen again beans where it used to be an orphan crop, where nobody was buying grain seed. For now, I don't think is high, but some area you got 10% of the seed requirement, which is from zero, maybe 15 years ago. Now it's going up to 10%. That's great. But that 10%, the moment it reaches a certain area, continuously, it saturates the agroecology or the certain corridor, and then farmer can get from grain to grain, or the new variety comes in order to change the varieties as well. So I think private sector interested in profit, but you need also to understand them, what drives them, and then work toward that as well. And I think that's the solution. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Jesse. So we are now approaching the closure of this session before we open up the discussion for the general question and answer. I just have one final question for Swati. So Swati, before we open it for the question, how do you see this award? What does this award mean to a young woman researcher like you and many others who would like to follow your footsteps?
Yeah, thank you, Ajay. Any award is certainly a motivation, and and this award was especially for field research and applications. So while growing up and studying agriculture and getting into the application domains, and I one thing always puzzled me is that, when as professionals we go ahead, even in the classrooms, I saw many women students, in the agriculture colleges and etc. But when it comes to the extension and outreach centric activities and careers and etc., I was surprised by the diminishing numbers gradually. Though I felt that this could have been, an immense, a powerful tool when we are thinking that there are farmers, especially women farmers and community, who can be engaged in terms of creating alternative technology scaling and delivery mechanisms. The way women professionals and how the thought process, the engagement they could bring into that process would be really critical and useful. So being able to do that and breaking that barrier and go beyond to work with those alternative institutions, those mechanisms, not just with the market actors, but also with the a lot of the community and their enterprises. That was overwhelming, and the feeling of seeing the a lot of world in a short span of life. And so this award gives the confidence to that central idea that which I believe that no technology is great until and unless it is being accessible to the the end users or the smallholders. So being in that end where we have this opportunity to ensure that the greatest products that is coming out from the breeding research of many eminent breeders and great breeders, that we can play a role to ensure that that is available to the last mile farmer. So that is an immense satisfaction which we doing as a community as a whole. So I dedicated this hour to this entire seed system community at a large. And it's just not for me, it's for JC, it's for Chris for being the ex-World Food Prize team's member. And so I think this is something which I would like to dedicate, and also like to re-emphasize that how creating robust scaling pathways, approaches, and researches even around that, and impact to scale is critical when it comes to germplasm and its development process as well.
Wow, excellent. Thank you, Swati. I'm sure this message will go a long way, in all the young researchers and also the established researchers, like us. Well, okay. So thank you again. So all the panelists, please keep your cameras on, because we are going to the next session, which is the question answer session. And Julie, can we? So I saw one question from Lawrence Kent. Lawrence, first of all, thank you for joining. I know it's very early for you, but thanks for really taking time off. Julie, can we give mic to Lawrence for him to really reflect on the entire process? And I know he has one question posted on the chat.
I believe that Lawrence can unmute and speak out. Everybody can.
Hello, Lawrence, can you hear that?
Lawrence, you can unmute yourself with the mute button that is on the left.
Do we still have Lawrence with us, or
maybe Lawrence dropped at some point?
Maybe, yeah. In the meantime, okay, let me take. So there was first question, and this was to JC, and this question is from Stephen Walsh. Stephen, would you like to go ahead and narrate your question, or shall I just? Stephen, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Please go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah,
yes,
so the question to JC was, he presented a couple of slides on what appeared to be some dramatic increases in production in number of the countries where the efforts to promote increased access to to better germplasm for haricot was promoted. It just wasn't clear to what extent that production increase was like overall production increase, or whether we were actually looking at yield increases. And then sort of through that, trying to get a sense of to what extent did the improved access to varieties lead to, actual increases in yield, as opposed to, production increases that would have been related to increases in land area. Over.
Yes,
okay. Thanks, Steve, and greetings. Yeah, you're right. So I shared probably that was mainly on the yield, the productivity, but also in many countries the production per se increased, because let's say Uganda, which moved from 0.5 tons in 2000, now 1.6 tons, but the production has also increased. But then the question you're asking is that, does that only attributed to the varieties? I said no, not alone, but the varieties help the farmer, because once the variety incentivizes the farmer to invest in other technologies or innovation, because the variety helps the farmer to see the potential to have a better probably market profitability, and then they could say, well, if I weed or twice rather than once, if I add some soil fertility enhancement, if I have a better post-harvest, then my income increases or my production increases. So the variety contribute a certain percentage, which we haven't determined, maybe 30 to 40%, some people say that. But the rest comes from other agronomic practices and even weeding on time, soil fertility, and disease and pest. But there's a varieties also, good number of them have a good disease and pest tolerance. Really, I give credit to the breeders. And then that incentivizes the farmer to invest in agronomy and other technologies. Without that, you will not really be incentivized to do as a farmer. I think that's how I look at it as well. But it's not only variety which pushes the productivity and the production a lot higher. So that's a combination of several others, but the variety makes people to feel incentivized.
Excellent. Thank you, JC. I know David has one question, but David, just let me just pick one from the chat box. David, if that's okay.
It was just a follow-up. It's just a follow-up to Steve Walsh's question.
Sure. Please go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So Steve, I think you raised a very good point. It's difficult to quickly establish a causal linkage between bean output or yield growth that JC was reporting on the one hand and better seed quality on the other hand. There are lots of other factors at play, not just G by E by M interactions that JC was talking about, but also changes in price, right? That affect the choice of farmers to invest in their land and to produce for market and things like that, or changes in the cost of production, or changes in the exports. So I'm sure you and everyone on the call is very familiar with how the markets for beans work in many countries. We can investigate those trends with certain types of data that we have at our disposal. But it is very difficult if we want to get down to a variety specific level and try to attribute yield or output growth to the introduction of quality seed or new varieties. I mean, that's a level of resolution that nationally representative surveys don't usually capture in Tanzania or other countries. So it's something to think about further when we talk about establishing causal identification or causal relationships between productivity and production growth on the one hand, and quality seed or improved varieties on the other. That's all. Great question. Thanks very much.
Thank you, David. All right, so let me just pick one from chat box. So this is from Lema from Ethiopian Institute of Agricultural Research, and Lema says, how to improve link between actors in the seed system? Who would like to take this? Chris, would you like to take a shot at it?
Yeah, I think it goes back to a comment I made about identifying the roles of these various actors. Economists use a term called structure, conduct, and performance of a particular system or a chain. Essentially, you need to understand, I was calling it customer profiling. Who are the actors and what is their need? You will not be able to do a proper link between the actors if you don't understand what their needs are. Otherwise, you end up supplying, let me pick an example of groundnut. You supply groundnut that is meant for confectionery use to somebody whose interest is extracting oil or making peanut butter. And then that is misaligned in terms of needs. So it's supposed to be understanding the needs of the various actors that enables us to do a proper linkage. And without that understanding or that customer profiling, then I would say even product profiling doesn't work well. You only do proper product profiling when you have a proper customer profiling. And that proper product profiling also enables you to do proper, I would say, market segmentation, addressing the right market. So for me, it's about the profiles of the actors, what their needs are, then addressing their needs, working backwards. Otherwise, if you go back to the example, JC talked about the corridor approach. He talked about the consumption utilization corridor. He talked about the distribution corridor, and he talked about the production corridor. So if you can also characterize your actors into those three different segments, then you know who are the actors within the production corridor. How do they link up with the distribution corridor? And how does that link up finally with the consumption corridor? Thank you.
Thank
Maybe
you.
Ajay, we
Thank
have a
you,
document
Chris.
here, food share. We have a document on bean corridor, and that's demand pool Chris talked about. I can put in the chat, and then they can download it, and then they will have time. So let me just put it.
Oh, that would be
there.
great. Perfect. Yeah,
We just
that
published
would be
this,
great, Jesse. Sure. Thank you. So let me just pick one more question from the chat box, and probably Swati, I probably would like you to answer this one. So this is from Sam Namanda. And then it goes like this. Apart from organized trainings by resourceful technical partners, how would farmer to farmer information sharing on appreciating improved seed use and good agronomic practices be encouraged? Swati, looks like you're on mute.
Yeah, certainly. The training mechanisms, the number of trainings or even the trainers may not be available to the millions of farmers which we are talking about. And we know that in case of, smallholder seed system, which we are talking about, farmer managed seed system. I try to use this word instead of saying it as informal system, because it has been a backbone of our seed sufficiency over the ages, and somehow this farmer to farmer exchange of not only just seed but the know-how and knowledge is going to play a critical role. So, but how do we strengthen that? There we can play a role by partnering with multiple public, private extension institutions, by targeting, say master farmers, or you say the farmer TOTs, or the farmers who could be innovative farmers in their groups in the community where they are residing. So by targeting those TOT mode master farmers trainings, and not just trainings, developing a lot of information and knowledge material which is custom made to meet the requirement of the region, but also very relatable and contextual to them. Like we have gone to ahead of preparing say training manuals and modules which we consider as more community friendly or gender friendly, because there we have reduced or minimized the scientific jargons or the scientific terminologies, which probably our training manuals or even classroom training programs are very heavy while imparting. So what we have tried to simplify those through more of like pictorial or visible demonstrations of different steps, marking it as per the calendar of operations in the field, what they need to follow as a step 1, step 2, step 3 for quality seed production. And hanging that pictorial calendar in the wall of their house and referring to in the critical months or the weeks have been very useful. What the feedback we have received and observed, and how they recall and they retain the information and knowledge that is shared with them, and how they use that from neighbor farmer to other farmer in the group when they sit and work, and that peer group learning is something which can certainly play a critical role when it comes to maintaining at quality seed even at a household level and sharing within the community till the formal delivery networks are reaching to their doorstep or to their villages, and which might take many years to become a reality, given that still we are not able to cater 60-70% of this market. And in that context, it is very important that we keep remaining focused also on farmer based knowledge and farmer to farmer sharing of practices, and creating enabling information sources or knowledge which is farmer friendly to be able to do that.
Thank you, Swati. We also have Sean from FAO. Sean, would you like to just go ahead and open your microphone if you are still with us?
Sure, thank
Sean.
you. I mean,
please.
Thank you. Yes, this was inspired a little bit by the middle of Swati's presentation, though. She did, go on to, in a way, answer it, but maybe I'll frame it still as a challenge, which is around the marketing side of seed, that whether you're doing it through community groups or through seed agro dealers, there's investment required from their side. There's information they need to access. In the past, I know AGRA and other agro-dealer centered approaches have tended to focus on the agro-dealers, and those have a limited reach and can soak up a lot of funding without reaching the last mile. And I know that that's a priority here. So I guess recognizing the challenges of these enterprises on the marketing side, what solutions do you see to when working with, for example, you mentioned farmer producer organizations, to make sure they have access to new varieties, to relevant information going forward in a continued way, because otherwise they won't stay as viable businesses, or they will just take up a lot of investment from the development side to be viable. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Swati. Very briefly. Very briefly. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Please go ahead.
absolutely. There remains, different nuances to it, and no single model will fit into the bracket of, from region to region and the context to context. It's also important that when we intervene or start identifying, a particular community group, to be able to, see the feasibility of seed business with them, we have very clearly defined, whether we say a mapping of their skill set or we can say it in terms of grading them, that where they are in terms of value chain activities, or be able to leverage seed business, because we know that this will be a very niche business, and that would require a lot of factors to play. So often we have done this kind of mapping and taken differential approach. I mean, I'm just giving an example. As I said, it may vary from context to context. That there have been evolved institutions who have their established credit sources, or a base some base volume of business in other commodities or other kind of activities, but they now want to explore into the seed business. So where we see that there is upper hand, probably there we can set a goal appropriately for them, up to what level of the value chain they could push themselves in terms of whether they can be a full-fledged enterprise in taking up the branding, packaging, and the selling or marketing aspects. But there could be also the models where they are not yet ready to jump into that stage, and it could be really, really risky to even encourage them to be go into that complete mode of model of business or marketing and etc., where they can also rely on partnerships with the larger players or the larger companies, or even larger seed corporations who have larger have a more dealership and assured marketing network. So such those full-fledged model, those subletting or channel partner models, those are few things we have been exploring. But what really remains, that in order to make them sustain, that we have to create that linkage with this existing institutions in the entire governance system in that particular region, creating linkage in terms of who are the officials, who are the stakeholders, what are the processes they have to follow, creating that know-how also, face value, but also knowing who are the authority for different steps in the entire value chain. That is very important. Certainly, that would need a lot of effort to make sure that and also it is very important, how do they choose their particular commodity to focus upon, be it a variety, but also crop, and how do they create that break-even and business opportunity? That is something which needs to be also carefully dug into, where we have seen that no particular single or one or two variety or one crop sometimes lead to sustenance of a seed business. It has to be a multi-crop regime where they need to have a linkage with some other institutions and other players as well. But yes, by mapping them with what stage they are into, turning into an enterprise, and accordingly created graded approach, or of what could be like alternative options for them. Is a less riskier option, I would say, that we have been trying.
All right. Swati, thank you. And thanks everyone, because I wish I could just keep this discussion going on, but we are already at the top of the hour. And I still would like to invite Dr. Ian Barker, our Senior Director for Strategy Delivery and Scaling within Genetic Innovation in CGIAR, to just offer his closing remarks. Ian, sorry, you will have to be very, very, very brief. Ian, are you with us?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
thank you, Andrew.
yeah.
I will be super brief. Actually, I don't need to. Anyway, David set out at the beginning of this what we're attempting to do with Seed Equal, and it's we judge ourselves and ask others to evaluate us through these lenses of around seed replacement rates, variety innovation linking to new varieties, and of course developing inclusive and equitable seed systems. We're only 2 years into this, and I think from our speakers, it's clear we're making very great progress in all of these areas. I don't need to summarize what we heard, because Chris did that really well in framing the debate around the supply side issues and interventions and the demand side. So all I'm going to say is I read the citations for our 2 award winners, and they're truly inspiring. They accepted these awards on behalf of their teams, but both of them are very humble people, and I'd just like to thank them for their leadership in getting us to where we are, and obviously to thank our funders for the support of this program. And my challenge to Swati and JC is just to take the learnings from beans and from rice, beans in East Africa, rice in India, and how do we learn from this and spread this learnings and knowledge to the other crops, to other legumes, and to other cereals. But thank you very much, and thank you, Ajay, for putting all this together, and the communications team. Thank you.
Well, with that, I really would like to thank everyone, and especially our panelists today, speakers today, JC, Swati, Chris, Ian, thanks to you, even David, thanks. And thanks everyone for taking time out, and I think making this very exciting event. And again, this is just the start of it. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is going to be a series of webinars under CGIAR Seed Equal, and we will try our best to really pass on information well in advance to all these groups. So with that, thank you so much. And